Today, we will be discussing a case that I have been aware of for years, and honestly, I don't know why I haven't done a video on this sooner. But this case is about a man from Germany who went missing while on vacation in Bulgaria. There is bizarre CCTV footage, erratic behavior, conflicting information, and it's very difficult to know what is truth and what isn't. Lars Mittank'S was born on February 9th, 1986 in Germany. Lars worked at a power plant, was a super friendly guy, had lots of friends, had a girlfriend, and seemed like a really good son, as when his father had a stroke, Lars would help out around his parents' house after he was done with work for the day. So on June 30th, 2014, 28-year-old Lars and 5 of his friends from school departed on a vacation to Varna, Bulgaria, about 1,200 miles away from Germany, where they were staying at a beach resort called Golden Sands along the Black Sea coast. And this was actually Lars's first time being out of the country, so I'm sure this was a super exciting ordeal for him to be all free and adventurous in another country with his best friends. So the week goes by, they have a ton of fun. The boys went swimming, played football, went out to some nightclubs, partied, and on their final day, they were going to be going back to Hamburg, Germany, where they would then hop a train back to their hometown of Itzehoe. But Lars's friends noticed something was off with him during this trip, because apparently Lars was not eating that much. When he did eat, he would have a bowl of soup or a salad, and while that was a little strange to his friends, it wasn't a huge cause for concern. Sometimes when you're on vacation, you just don't want to eat that much for whatever reason. I remember when I was in Mexico, I got super sick from the water, I think, and I ended up barely eating anything like the entire week that I was there. So that point specifically doesn't strike me as odd, and Lars didn't seem to be exhibiting any sort of symptoms or signs of having food poisoning or being sick or anything like that, so it's kind of hard to speculate. But his friends did notice this, just didn't think that much of it. Presumably, if something was wrong, Lars would tell them. So on July 6th, Lars and his friends went out to a bar and had some drinks, and afterward Lars went to a McDonald's to grab a bite to eat before heading back to the hotel to meet his friend. Inside the McDonald's was another group of German tourists, and I guess there was a disagreement regarding Lars's favorite football team, Werder Bremen, and a group of fans of the team, Bayern Munich, ensued, and eventually a fight broke out, which was 4 against 1, so Lars obviously sustained an injury, leaving Lars with a ruptured eardrum. He went to the hospital and was told that it would not be advisable for Lars to fly back home, because when you have a ruptured eardrum, the pressure from being inside the plane can cause so much immense pain that could potentially cause further damage. So he was recommended by the doctor he saw in Varna to not fly home and to wait a little bit for his eardrum to heal before he did so. Lars was also prescribed an antibiotic called cefuroxime, which would help to prevent him from any bacterial infections he may acquire whilst his eardrum is healing, because the purpose of the eardrum is to protect the middle ears, which if exposed can become susceptible to infection. While Lars was in the hospital, it was nearing the day when the boys were supposed to be leaving to go back to Germany, but since Lars couldn't fly, his friends didn't want to leave him stranded there in Bulgaria, so they planned to stay with him. But he told them no, that he would be fine to stay here by himself. He'd catch a plane home in a few days, and that was all good. So Lars's friends departed on their scheduled flight, which I personally find odd. I mean, if one of my friends was in the hospital in a foreign country, certainly I would stay there with them. But anyway, Lars was soon discharged from the hospital and needed a place to stay, as the reservation that he'd had at the Golden Sands resort was now expired. The thing was that in Bulgaria at this time, it was high season, so a lot of the hotels did not have any vacancies at all, really. But he did find one with a room available and checked into a hotel called Color, which had cheap rates and was nearby to the airport, so it seemed like a good deal. But that's seemingly where Lars's entire attitude shifted. CCTV footage from the hotel caught Lars acting very strangely once he got there. Lars called his mom back in Germany and was speaking to her in a whisper, telling her that 4 men were after him, that they wanted to kill him, and that she needs to cancel his credit cards for him, and he needed to find a place to hide. Later that night, he texted his mom again about his antibiotics. He was said to be acting erratic during his night at Color, walking around paranoid and terrified in the lobby, looking out the windows and hiding in the elevators. Then around 1 in the morning, Lars left the hotel before returning about an hour later, but no one knows where it was that he went. Very early the next morning on July 8th, Lars phoned his mom again and told her that the people who were after him were getting closer. His mom didn't have the opportunity to ask as many questions as she probably would have liked to, because Lars said that his phone was running out of battery, so the conversation had to be cut short. Later on, Lars arrived by taxi to the Varna airport, where he first texted his mom to tell her that he made it to the terminal, and then he made his way to the doctor's office. I guess he needed to be given clearance in order to be admissible to board the plane with his eardrum injury. The doctor noted that Lars was still acting strangely as he had at the hotel, just very erratic and bizarre behavior. And while lots of us get nervous while at the doctor, of course, this was just a little too weird for something so standard. Just a routine checkup, nothing even that bad. But that's when Lars mentioned to the doctor that he did not trust the medication that he'd been given for his ear, the antibiotics, but all seemed well and Lars was good to go ahead and get on his flight back to Germany and go home. Then a construction crew worker walked into the doctor's office as that whole terminal was being redone, and Lars began shaking. He started muttering to himself, saying things like, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." And that's when Lars took off. He left his bags, took nothing with him other than the clothes on his back. His cell phone, passport, wallet. He now had nothing but the yellow t-shirt, denim shorts, and white runners that he was wearing. It was like someone had possessed him. It was so random that he did this, and he just looked so scared. Lars was seen on CCTV bolting from the airport's main entrance, stopping for a moment, then taking off again, running through the parking lot, down the street, where he then climbed an 8-foot-tall barbed wire fence into a sunflower field, into the woods, and was never seen again. Some have speculated that the reason for Lars's odd behavior was that he may have potentially received a concussion when he'd gotten into that fight at the McDonald's. Sometimes symptoms from a concussion don't show up for a few days, which could explain the change in behavior that Lars had once his friends were gone. Though doctors have noted that this level of erratic behavior does not often happen to the extremes that Lars was exhibiting so soon after. Oftentimes it takes years or multiple concussions for your behavior to change like that. Others say that just the mere act of Lars having been in a fight with these 4 guys just traumatized him, and he developed paranoia and was just freaking out, not knowing how to deal with the aftermath. But it's weird because Lars's mom said that he doesn't have a history of mental illness, though that doesn't mean that something wasn't lingering beneath the surface, just waiting for an event like this to bring it up. Then there's obviously the medication to consider. It's often hard to know how your body's going to react to the potential side effects of a new medication. And it seems like just after Lars started taking these antibiotics for his ruptured eardrum that all of this started taking place. So it seems like the logical thing to consider that Lars could have had some weird reaction to the medication causing him to freak out the way that he did. But the airport doctor, Dr. Kostov, said that Lars never even filled his prescription for the antibiotics. He never took a single one because he didn't have them. Though there are other reports that say that Lars did take his medication. But I mean, I don't know why the doctor at the airport would lie about that. But I mean, I guess we don't really know for sure. And like I said at the beginning, there is a lot of conflicting information within this case. So 3 weeks go by without a single shred of a trace of Lars, and that's when his mom hires a private investigator named Andreas Gutig, who started with viewing the CCTV footage of Lars, followed by him contacting various hospitals and homeless shelters throughout Bulgaria, because at this point, Lars is a mystery man. He has no identification on him, so if he's sleeping somewhere on the streets, got arrested, or got injured and taken to the hospital, no one knows who he is, so he could very well be a John Doe somewhere in the country. But it turns out that there was no one matching his description anywhere that Andreas would call. Andreas went out to Varna and began handing out missing posters with Lars's information on them, but no one seemed to recognize him either. Lars seemed to have just up and vanished, which caused some people to believe that Lars did this intentionally to start a new life, that perhaps he had acted all crazy as a sort of ruse to throw people off, and he intentionally left his baggage behind and ran off into the wilderness to start fresh. But his parents don't believe that he would have done that to them. Lars was an only child, and his mom believed that he wouldn't just abandon them like that. But the thing is, Lars did have a lot of knowledge about surviving in the outdoors. He could hunt, trap, and fish, and since he took off into the woods, there's a possibility that Lars would have known how to take care of himself out there. But some think that due to Varna getting very hot in the summer months when Lars was out there, it's very unlikely that Lars could have survived without a water source. But there was a large river near to the airport where he had run off into the forest, so that checks out, but then there's the need for food and shelter. I mean, he could have caught his own food, he could could have made a makeshift shelter, but people believe that if he truly tried to live out there in the wilderness, that he was now dead. Though police did search that area of the woods and the river, and they took cadaver dogs, but nothing was ever found. And I think if we're to operate under this theory, there are a variety of scenarios that could have played out. He could have found an abandoned cabin, he could have been picked up, this whole thing could have been a plan, but I mean, how often does something like that ever truly work out? So I'm not entirely sure what to think, if this was Lars doing this on purpose in order to start a new life, if he really was having a mental breakdown, or if somebody truly was after him. But unless he's found, there's really no way to know. Which brings us to 2016, where police in Porto-Velho, Brazil, found a man walking barefoot along the side of the highway. He had tattered clothing on and seemed confused with where he was, what he was doing, and didn't even know who he was either. A photo of this man began circulating on social media of him laying in a hospital bed. And the man is blonde, albeit with some more facial hair than Lars, but he was the same height, same body type, and this really piqued the interests of a lot of people. And it was really starting to be wondered if this truly could be Lars Mittank, but it wasn't. It turned out that this was a Canadian man named Anton Philippa who had gone missing 5 years prior in 2012 from Toronto. Anton was an anti-poverty activist, a humanitarian, and his brother believed that Anton had gotten to Brazil mainly by walking or hitchhiking or hiding in the back of transport trucks, and that he did have a history of mental illness, which most likely played a role in why he was even in Brazil in the first place. Thankfully, this man was reunited with his family after half a decade, but unfortunately for Lars's family, it left them no closer to finding out where Lars was or what had happened to him. Another theory that's been floating around the internet is that Lars may have been sold into human trafficking, as Bulgaria has one of the highest rates of human trafficking in the EU. Some think that he had been smuggling drugs, others say that he'd been using recreational drugs, he may have fallen in with the wrong crowd in Bulgaria. Like, the list of theories is endless, and everyone seems to have an opinion on what they think had happened to him, a lot of them being plausible. But I think it's very strange that Lars just left all of his belongings at the airport. You'd think that if he felt paranoid to the point where he felt the need to take off when he did from the doctor's office, like, wouldn't he have had a reason to leave? Like, what was it about the construction worker that prompted Lars to react in the way that he did? I'm not blaming it on the construction worker, I'm just saying maybe it had something to do with his appearance or something like that that unsettled or startled Lars. Like, were the guys from the McDonald's that he'd gotten into a fight with construction workers, causing Lars to experience some sort of PTSD? Or was this construction worker just somebody who was dressed as a construction worker who was actually somebody who was out to get Lars? It's so difficult to speculate within this case because there are just so many factors to be considered. And I will note that while I was reading some comments about the theories surrounding Lars's disappearance, one Redditor noted that there are a number of discrepancies from this case due to a lot of the information in English news being lost in translation from that of German news articles. Some of the points that were made were that Lars's friends were the ones who told the media about the fight Lars was in at the McDonald's. This is what Lars had told them. They were not there, but apparently they did not believe Lars's version of how this fight went down. And apparently Lars had been acting weirdly the entire trip, not just in the last few days. And that a lot of news sources have been making Bulgaria out to be this terrifying high crime place, but apparently it isn't. It's basically as safe as any other European country. So if Lars wasn't actually in a brawl with these guys at the McDonald's, what was he doing that night when he was separated from his friends? How did he get that eardrum injury? Some people on the internet say that it could be as simple as Lars merely having cheated on his girlfriend while in Bulgaria, that he banged his head while they were having sex and ruptured his eardrum, and having made up this wild story about having been in a fight to his friends so that this information would not get back to his girlfriend. Then in 2019, a truck driver in Dresden, Germany, picked up a hitchhiker and drove him to Schildau, which is north of Berlin. The driver didn't know about Lars's case until later, when he made the connection that the man he picked up looked a lot like an older version of the photos being distributed of Lars prior to his disappearance. So Lars's mom asked people in the areas of Berlin and Brandenburg to keep their eyes out for someone who looks like Lars. Apparently, Lars's mom believes that he may have lost his memory and doesn't look young and carefree anymore, and that he now may have a beard, long hair, tired eyes, and hollow cheekbones. And that's pretty much where this case ends off. It's crazy because there are so many questions in this case with so many possible answers to these questions, yet nothing is concrete. Missing persons cases are always heartbreaking, knowing that there is a family out there who doesn't know what's happened to their loved one, and their lives are essentially altered forever trying to figure out what happened to them. Lars's case has become one of the most popular missing persons cases on YouTube, and hopefully someone, somewhere, someday will be able to provide a tip that will lead to the discovery of Lars Mittank. But if you are new to my channel, please give this video a like and subscribe if you have not already. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.